Practice for Architects. Part 1, Theory and Background. Chapter 1.2, The Architect as Professional. Definitions. Advocacy. The act or process of supporting a cause or proposal. Architect. A person or entity registered, licensed, or otherwise authorized exclusively to use the title architect and to practice architecture in a province or territory. Competency. The ability to do something successfully or efficiently. Copyright. The exclusive legal right to reproduce, publish, sell, or distribute the matter and form of something, such as a literary, musical, or artistic work. Intellectual property. Property such as an idea, invention, or process that derives from the work of the mind or intellect. Practice of architecture. From the UIA Accord on Recommended International Standards of Professionalism in Architectural Practice. The practice of architecture consists of the provision of professional services in connection with town planning, as well as the design, construction, enlargement, conservation, restoration, or alteration of a building or group of buildings. These professional services include, but are not limited to, planning and land use planning, urban design, provision of preliminary studies, designs, models, drawings, specifications, and technical documentation, coordination of technical documentation prepared by others, such as consulting engineers, urban planners, landscape architects, and other specialist consultants, as appropriate and without limitation. Construction economics, contract administration, monitoring of construction, referred to as supervision in some countries, project management, referred to each provincial or territorial Architects Act for a legal definition. Profession, a vocation or calling, especially one that involves some branch of advanced learning or science. Public good or public interest, the benefit or advantage of the community as a whole. Introduction. Membership in any profession, whether law, medicine, teaching, journalism, accounting, or architecture, entails not only the mastery of a body of knowledge and skills, but at its best, the honoring of a social contract to advance basic human values. That is a quote by Boyer and Midgay. The dedication to advancing the human condition and upholding the public trust distinguishes professions from other occupations. Most professions in Canada, including architecture, are self-governing and self-regulating. The provinces and the Northwest Territories, through enabling legislation, the Provincial and Territorial Architects Acts, have established associations which regulate admission to the profession in exchange for safeguarding the public. The Provincial and Territorial Associations of Architects are mandated to maintain high standards of practice and ethics among their members. The practice of architecture. The International Union of Architects, Union Internationale des Architectes, or UIA, is the international non-governmental organization that represents the world's architects. Founded in Lausanne, Switzerland, in 1948, the UIA defines architectural practice thus: conservation, restoration, or alteration of a building or group of buildings. These professional services include, but are not limited to, planning and land use planning, urban design, provisions of preliminary studies, designs, models, drawings, specifications, and technical documentation, coordination of technical documentation prepared by others, such as consulting engineers, urban planners, landscape architects, and other specialist consultants, as appropriate and without limitation, construction economics, contract administration, monitoring of construction, referred to as supervision in some countries, and project management. That's from the UIA Accord on Recommended International Standards of Professionalism in Architectural Practice. From the Quebec National Assembly's, or Assemblée Nationale de Quebec, Bill 401, an act mainly to improve the quality of buildings, the regulation of divided co-ownership, and the operation of the Régie du Logement. 15. The practice of architecture consists of engaging in analysis, design, and advisory activities applied to the construction, enlargement, or alteration of a building with regard to its siting, envelope, and interior layout, as well as the materials and methods used, in order to ensure that the building is durable, functional, and harmonious. The practice of architecture also consists in coordinating the work of the persons who, in relation to architectural work, participate in the construction, enlargement, or alteration of a building. The practice of architecture includes respect for the environment and life, the protection of property, heritage preservation, and economic efficiency to the extent that they are related to the architect's professional activities. Provincial and territorial architects' acts and self-regulation. The practice of architecture refers to the professional services associated with design, alteration, and management of construction of a building or group of buildings. The Attorney General of Canada has mandated provincial and territorial associations of architects to determine and regulate the conduct of their members in their practice. The Provincial and Territorial Architects Acts are government statutes which establish the authority of each individual self-regulating professional association. They define the scope of practice for which architects in that jurisdiction are responsible and mandate the legal responsibilities, terms, and standards associated with their professional designation. The authority granted by the Architects Acts allows each self-regulating architectural association to determine subsequent regulations that govern the behavior and practice of their members. This can include bylaws, codes of ethics, codes of conduct, rules, regulations, policies, and protocols. It is the responsibility of professional members to uphold the standards set by the regulating bodies, and, as members, they are empowered to contribute their voice by joining councils, surveys, or committees in self-governance. See also Chapter 1.6, the Organization of the Profession in Canada. Professionalism. In the Western tradition, the professions were the scholarly endeavors and practices of theology, law, and medicine, historically called the learned professions. They had certain principles and characteristics distinct from other vocations. The term professional is derived from the Latin profiteri, meaning to declare publicly. The notion of declaring our skill publicly reinforces our dedication to the public good. Unfortunately, the expression profession or professional is often misused and overused in an attempt to capitalize on the influence and prestige associated with the original status enjoyed by scholarly professions. Today, the expression does not necessarily represent an principles of professionalism. It is the responsibility of professionals and their regulating bodies to uphold the significance of their respective professions. To be worthy of the term, all professionals must conduct both their personal and business lives according to certain fundamental principles. Advocacy. Professional designation has a place in the public context, which is defined by the governmental mandate to create an Architects Act. The architect's role as professional is in educating the public and advocating for the elements in society that are affected by the specialized knowledge and skill that the architect possesses. Architects are well equipped to serve local communities by contributing to public policy, serving on local councils, or participating in peer review, such as municipal design review panels. In their professional capacity, architects often advocate for their contribution in defining public spaces, environmental policy, and generally preserving the public interest where it is affected by components that may fall under the scope of practice defined by the provincial or territorial act regulating architectural practice and the profession at large. In this public-facing capacity, architects maintain the dignity of the profession by adhering to the regulations for conduct laid out by their associations. Principles of the profession. All professionals are required to adhere to the following four principles: expertise, autonomy, commitment to public good, and accountability. Expertise. Professionals possess a comprehensive body of knowledge, skills, and theory developed through education and experience. The process of professional education, experience, and examination is structured to assure the public that professionals engaged to perform professional services have acquired the expertise to perform them to acceptable standards. To achieve proficiency, professionals undergo intensive preparation, gaining specialized knowledge in an academic setting. Education in an academic setting is usually followed by a period of training and practice. Alternatively, education and training may be concurrent, as in university-based cooperative learning programs or the RAIC syllabus program. Because acute judgment is such an essential skill in the provision of services, professionals are required to be proficient, adept, skilled, and expert. While in practice, professionals continue their personal scholarship, their quest for knowledge, and their growth by experience. The combination of continuous education and experience and practice provide the professional with a body of tacit and explicit knowledge on which to draw. In parallel, knowledge sharing becomes intrinsic to the profession and is expressed through mentorship and supervision. See also Chapter 1.4, Mentorship and Career Transitions. Autonomy. Professional practitioners provide expert advice, independent of self-interest. Uncompromised professional judgment should take precedence over any other motive. Professionals are at liberty to exercise discretion, and clients value their judgment and authority. They act independently and accept responsibility for their actions. Professionals must also embrace the spirit and the letter of the laws governing their professional affairs, and thoroughly consider the broader societal and environmental impacts of their professional activities. Commitment to public good. Professionals bring a high level of dedication to their work. Members of professions are mandated primarily to serve societal needs in a competent and professional manner, and to exercise unprejudiced and impartial judgment on their behalf. In benefiting societal needs, architects are committed to upholding their professional integrity. The commitment is inherent in the dedication required of an architect to become a licensed professional. professional. In practice, architects' commitment to continuing education to maintain their currency, their contribution to the profession contributes to contemporary societal needs. Accountability. Professionals are aware of their responsibility to provide independent and, if necessary, critical advice to their clients and of the effects of their work on society and the environment. Professionals undertake to perform professional services only when they, together with those whom they may manage or consult, are qualified by education, training, or experience in the services offered. Professionals accept personal responsibility and liability for the consequences of their professional behavior. Furthermore, professionals are expected to protect not only the primary interest of their clients, but also the interest of the public good. Professionals must provide and exercise the standard of care typical of their profession, but they are not required to have an extraordinary degree of skill. Professional liability insurance. The provincial and territorial associations vary in their requirements for professional liability insurance. In most jurisdictions in Canada, professional liability insurance is mandatory. Professional liability insurance will protect the public by providing financial compensation as a result of an error, omission, or negligence in the provision of professional services. Under some provincial and territorial statutes of limitations, there is a limitation period for bringing an action related to professional services. However, in certain jurisdictions, the risk can endure for a lifetime. Architects should discuss their insurance requirements with their insurer. See also Chapter 3.8, Risk Management and Professional Liability, or Appendix E, Comparison of Statutes of Limitations in each province and territory. Architecture as a profession. Architecture, which has been described as a social art and also an artful science, is the sole profession whose members are qualified to design and to provide advice, including technical and aesthetic judgment on the built environment. Architects provide services and solutions with technical competence and aesthetic sensitivity suitable to the physical, social, cultural, and economic environment, thereby inspiring the community and its citizens. In matters of public health and safety, architects are obliged to serve the public interest and respond to the public need. The concepts of health and safety are expanding to encompass the sustainability of the global environment and accessibility for all persons. The four generic principles of professionalism previously outlined in this chapter apply to architecture, but what distinguishes architecture from other professions? In the broadest of terms, architecture is the profession which endeavors to identify the public need and to serve the public interest in matters relating to the built environment. In this context, architecture is environmental design. In fact, any manipulation of the physical environment is of potential interest to architects. Other disciplines such as interior design and landscape architecture share in specific aspects of the design of the built environment. The practice of architecture is usually broader than the regulations governing the profession. However, legislation formalizes a specific relationship between the profession and society by setting certain regulations which limit and define membership in practice. An architect's proficiency may extend well beyond the requirements of registration/licensure, particularly after extensive experience. For example, although statutes involved in other structures which require only engineers by building code, such as warehouses and bridges, or smaller buildings such as single-family residences that do not require the involvement of a licensed professional. The architect is involved not only in the building design, but is also concerned about the impact of a building or buildings on the character of a community. Architects have traditionally filled the role of the prime professional responsible for managing and coordinating a project. The architect's seal. An important symbol and tool of the architectural profession is the architect's seal. An architect's seal is a professional seal and not a business seal. The seal must be applied to certain documents prepared by the architect who is licensed to practice. Issued by the provincial or territorial association, the seal assures the public and authorities having jurisdiction that they may rely on document preparation prepared under an architect's supervision, direction, and control with confidence. Affixing the seal to documents indicates that they were prepared under supervision, direction, and control of a licensed architect. For information on the proper application of the professional seal, refer to the provincial or territorial association's practice bulletins. See also Chapter 1.6, The Organization of the Profession in Canada, Appendix E, charts comparison of practice requirements of each provincial and territorial association. Copyright. All artistic works, including music, photography, paintings, drawings, artistic crafts, and architectural designs, are intellectual property belonging to their creator. In Canada, a copyright does not have to be registered. It rests automatically with the author, and so does the responsibility to demonstrate any ownership of copyright by the author. The Copyright Act protects the architect's designs and drawings from unauthorized use or copying. The ownership of the copyright rests with the architect unless the architect assigns it in writing to someone else. Architects are advised to retain ownership of the copyright in all instances. Copyright protection is also provided in the standard forms of agreement. RAIC Document 6, Canadian Standard Form of Contract for Architect Services, state that the architect retains the copyright for their work and grants the client a license to use the instrument of service, i.e., the drawings and specifications, for the purpose of constructing, using, maintaining, altering, and adding to the project. See also Chapter 6.4, Construction Documents, and Appendix A, Copyright and Architects. Building inscriptions. The architect may be permitted to arrange for the installation of a permanent inscription on the building, which may identify the construction date, owner, architect, and builder. Traditionally, a cornerstone was used. However, today, other suitable signs or inscriptions are provided on the permanent fabric of the building. In some localities, building inscriptions may be required for specific projects. Building inscriptions provide an opportunity to foster public discourse on architecture and to provide recognition of both the contribution of the professional and the profession. Lastly, we have non-professionals and the built environment. It is important, especially for the public and for clients, to understand that there are many other disciplines that provide services for design